our first speakers are Mary and David from Bike Culver City. So I will spotlight the two of them.
Okay, thanks very much for inviting us tonight. And I just want to mention that I'm a member of the steering committee of Bike Culver City. I'm now one of the co-chairs along with David Metzler. And we have some other steering committee members here tonight, Bubba Fish, Michelle Weiner, and also Kareem Sali, who's helping me with this presentation. So with that, we'll just go ahead and get started. Bike Culver City was formerly known as the Culver City Bicycle Coalition and was formed in 2010 to work toward making Culver City a safer, more bike-friendly community. We're an all-volunteer, member-supported organization that encourages cycling, educates cyclists and motorists for safer streets, advocates to make Culver City not only more bike-friendly, but also helps provide more equitable mobility solutions and supports the successful implementation of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, along with other city policies, including Vision Zero and Complete Streets. We're a local chapter of the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition, which is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. The LACBC is committed to making all communities in LA County healthy, safe, and fun places to ride a bike through advocacy, education, and outreach. LACBC envisions a Los Angeles County that is a great place for everyday, year-round bicycling. People live in healthier, more vibrant communities where the air is cleaner and streets are both quieter and safer for everyone. More women, families, and children ride their bikes and appreciate opportunities to enjoy their neighborhoods and their city. All people of varying cultures and backgrounds can ride their bikes everywhere safely and conveniently. To meet these lofty goals, we at Bike Culver City do several things. We host periodic rides. We're trying to return to a monthly ride schedule now that the pandemic is allowing that. We have a monthly happy hour at various locations around the city. You'll find us often running bike valets at community events. And of course, we have many ongoing advocacy projects, and we would welcome your involvement in any or all of these activities. We have a robust presence on social media, including over 700 followers on our Facebook page. We also use Instagram and Twitter to reach out. We have an email list. If you do not want to engage with social media, you can contact us at bikeculvercity@gmail.com to get onto our list or to ask questions or make suggestions to us. Please feel free to reach out. We want to show you this little piece of a video that received quite a bit of reaction on social media. It was made by one of our steering committee members, Dylan Gottlieb, riding with his 6-year-old daughter through the streets on her way from their home in Rancho Heigera all the way to El Marino School. There she goes. That's Milo, 6 years old. BCC was instrumental in the city's adoption of several policies which are guiding the city's infrastructure upgrades to make life safer for cyclists, scooters, and pedestrians. These include the Bicycle and Pedestrian Action Plan, Vision Zero policy, and the Complete Streets policy. You can find all of these in their entirety on the city website with all their details. We are very pleased that, due in part to our advocacy, the city recently added to their website a page which lists all current mobility projects under the supervision of the Public Works Department. Some of the ongoing projects on this list that are priorities for us include opening the Jackson Gate and in general making the Bayona path more accessible and safer, improvements at the Lucerne-Ince intersection, the Farragut Bikeway, the implementation of the long-awaited bike lanes and improved infrastructure in the Fox Hills neighborhood, the expansion and improvement of the overland bike lanes, which would extend from Venice all the way to Slauson and hopefully make the entire length protected, adding a safe crossing at the library. We support Move Culver City, its continued improvement and its eventual expansion. We also support creating connections to the West Adams buffered bike lanes and to Alenda and the Culver bike path. We support the effort to expand the Bayona path to the east, where the creek meets Venice Boulevard east of Hauser, from where the creek proceeds underground. BCC is committed to a car-free Main Street plaza. In March, the City Council voted to open Main Street to cars, except on Tuesdays for the farmers market and on weekends. Unfortunately, staff is delaying the implementation of this directive. BCC is trying hard to hold staff and our electeds accountable to the motion that was approved in March so that we can enjoy our Main Street Plaza during the summer and beyond, at least on the weekends. This fall, we will return to participating in Operation Firefly, which is a countywide program of LACBC and LA Metro to actually hand out lights to cyclists who are riding at night without them. This is one of our favorite programs, and we're glad that it will be returning in the fall as days start to become shorter. During the pandemic, while movements and meetings had restrictions, we found it a great time to do some additional research. So at Bike Culver City, we've been inspired to add depth and breadth to our advocacy as we explore the intersectionality between housing, parking, and active mobility. Therefore, in addition to attending City Council, BPAC, and Mobility Subcommittee meetings, you'll now find us at Planning Commission, Sustainability Subcommittee meetings when they start up again, and the Committee on Housing and Homelessness. We are committed to making Culver City a better place to live for everyone. So as Jeff mentioned, May is National Bike Month. So please follow our social media so you can find out about all of our many events. For now, draw a big circle around Thursday, May 19th, when we will host our Bike to Work Day. We have missed this event due to the pandemic, but we will be enthusiastically back at 2 locations, in our traditional spot at the Duquesne entrance to the Bayona Creek Path and on Washington Boulevard at the E-Line station near the Shea. That same evening, March 19th, we will have our May happy hour. So watch our social media or get on our email list to find out more details. We're a multi-generational, multi-ethnic group. I love all of my colleagues in BCC, and I would welcome the participation of anyone who wants to become more involved. But I would particularly like to extend an invitation to all the women out there. Cycling overall, worldwide, continues to be dominated by men, although there are some amazing women locally who are making heroic impacts. Please also follow our Women on Bikes Culver City Facebook page. And whoever you are, please come join our efforts. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Should we go to the next presentation now? Or David, you're kind of the teller of this team?
Well, we were going to open up for questions, so at whatever point you think that would work on your agenda.
Okay, great. If it's okay with you, maybe we could save the questions for the end, and then all the panelists could kind of handle them together.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. So let me spotlight you, and and bring on Michelle Weiner from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I'm not sure what role you're speaking in tonight, but I am happy you're able to join us.
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. I'm speaking as the chair of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Culver City. And first, I just want to commend Mary on that wonderful presentation. And it sort of gives you an overview of what community members can do when everyone gets together and pulls to have a good time and make change. The board that I'm talking about, the committee I'm talking about, is different in that this is a city committee, and most of the members have been appointed by the council, and the role is quite a bit different than a community group because we engage with the staff, and our role is to advance mobility for sure. And expand the role that the community can play. So in other words, we're open to listening to the community. We want to facilitate the community having a place to engage around mobility issues. And so to that end, this committee has representation from a broad range of the community. So that would be the business community, students, Culver City Unified School District, seniors, folks with disabilities, and residents. So those are all the marks that we try to hit actually I should say the council tries to hit when appointing members. So let's see, there was formerly a bike pedestrian committee that created a master plan. And then in about 6 years ago, the council determined that we needed an ongoing committee because we needed to have an action plan where first the action plan needed to be created and adopted. And then the action plan has all these elements that need to be worked on. So this is an ongoing committee, whereas the original committee had a finite task, which was to create their master plan. So this is an ongoing committee. And one of the first things we did was to look at all the elements involved in making the Bicycle Pedestrian Action Plan. And it's a great document. I think the link is going to be in the chat if it isn't there already. And so you can look at it. It's pretty impressive and pretty fantastic. And so we looked at all the different parts of that, including the Complete Streets policy and the Vision Zero data that is a big part of what this action plan is built on. And there was a lot of data that we looked at that we were presented with that sort of guides what was created. And that would be things like metrics around the high injury collision networks in our city, statistics about serious and fatal injury, what the traffic demands are, what the pedestrian volume counts were at that time. So we're changing fast. So a lot of this data that the plan was based on is probably quite different now. But all of the things that were outlined in this plan that have not been done yet, these still are quite valid. It's just that we probably need more based on what's going on now. There was extensive outreach to the community through surveys and meetings, and just a wide range of community stakeholders were engaged in creating the action plan. And in it, you'll find all of that information in detail, and also information about the implementation of the plan and the funding for the plan. Another thing that we were very involved in was the Safe Routes to School projects, primarily the one around La Bayona Elementary School. And that one is complete, and it includes bulb outs and improved crosswalks and a hawk light and a two-way cycle track. And it's pretty amazing. It's pretty fantastic. And it took a lot of work. The committee met with the community many, many, many times. And we even had a trial run at the two-way bike path sponsored by GoHuman so that people could try out what that would be like. But the bike path is just one portion of the Safe Routes to School project. And there's also a project, not as extensive, but projects around El Marino and El Rincon. So yeah, there's that was like a major undertaking for this committee. We've also done a lot of work around Metro Bike Share. And for reasons that I'm not going to go into now, we don't have Metro Bike Share right now, but it's not because we haven't been trying, but Metro is revamping their whole program. So in the meanwhile, our committee has, we recommended and the council adopted the idea of having private bike share for now, which is Wheels and most recently Bird. Bikes are available, e-bikes. So that's good news. Other things that Mary mentioned that are part of the Bicycle Pedestrian Action Plan are the Farragut Bike Boulevard. So we looked at the designs for that. And we look forward to the funding coming through for that to be built. And also the Fox Hills infrastructure. Another thing our committee was engaged in was that the rebuilding of the Heigera Bridge, there's an opportunity for a new ramp that's going to provide another opportunity to get onto the bike path. So, you know, our committee was really excited about this. We still are. Can't wait to try it once it's done. And with that additional connection, we also were engaged in making a recommendation about opening the Jackson Gate, which should be happening at the end of this month. Let's see. You know, surprisingly, our committee did not play a huge role in Move Culver City. I represented the BPAC on a separate committee involved with Move Culver City planning, but we did have a number of presentations along the way so that the transportation department could get feedback from the members. And let's see. Oh, and we were also engaged in talking about the dining space in the parking areas, pedestrianizing Main Street, making recommendations to look at pedestrianizing it. And as you know, the council has decided to make it pedestrianized on Tuesdays, market day, and weekends. That's the good news. So we meet the third Thursday at 6 p.m. every other month. We would love for you to come and participate or just listen. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. So let me unspotlight you and bring on Bubba Fish from Streets for All.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Bubba.
Thanks, Mary and Michelle. Those are both great. Good job, Cream, on the slides. My slides are not nearly that good, but Cream's a designer, so I'll give myself a pass. I can't screen share. Is that expected? Oh, now I can. Cool. All right, give me 1 second to pull this up. Let's see. Yeah, I'm fairly new to the Dem Club, so for those who don't know me, I'm Bubba. Thanks for having me. I am a legislative advocate at Streets for All, currently full-time, which is fun. I work on our state legislation team. So we make endorsements, both on our state legislators, but also the part that I really work on is our legislation. So, moving bills through state government, actually sponsoring some bills, and in some cases we created a few bills. And for those who aren't familiar, Streets for All is the only political action committee that's focused on transportation justice in LA County. So, I'm also a part of Bike Culver City. Bike Culver City is a 501c3, so they're not able to, or at Bike Culver City, we're not able to, specifically make endorsements or spend money on candidates, supporting those candidates. We can do a lot of other things that are awesome. At Streets for All, we do that. We support candidates. We can, even run ads for candidates. That's kind of the mission of Streets for All, is to elect more of those and create political change by electing more progressive folks up and down the ballot that are really focused on improving our mobility, for equity, for sustainability, all of that. So that's the mission of Streets for All. And just going into our, pretty much everyone on this call probably knows this, but for each bill, and the slide's actually not showing up perfectly, but each bill has to go through the first House of Origin, a policy committee, or two, maybe more, the Fiscal Impact Committee, appropriations, and then where it goes to the floor of that house. Then it has to repeat the whole cycle, and then it goes to the governor for a signature. I'm sure that's stuff that everyone here knows already, but I just wanted to share our website is streetsforall.org/state. This is going to list all of our legislative endorsements. I'm going to go through them now just to give you a sense of like what's on the docket this year, because transportation is a huge issue this year. There's never been a year in my memory with so many potentially transformative bills making their way through the legislature. So it's a very, very exciting year. And I'm going to go over those in a second. The other very fun, exciting thing that I haven't talked much about to anyone, we haven't really publicized it yet, is we created a report card where we're grading all of our legislators based on their mobility record. And we did this just based on their 2021 record, because that's the only year that we started endorsing bills. But if you go on our website at streetsforall.org/report-card, I'm going to type it in here, you can actually look up our legislators and see how good each one is. We graded them all from extraordinary, that's like over 100. They're authoring bills, they're, that are progressive for transportation. Perfect is like they voted for everything that they needed to, that we endorsed, and all the way down like A, B, C, D, F. So you'll get to see, it's kind of fun to go look and see what everyone's record is. And we hope to use this to hold our legislators' feet to the fire, and congratulate our allies that are doing amazing work. Laura Friedman, Scott Weiner, folks like that, and to sort of hold our legislators who are more were aggressive on this issue, hold their feet to the fire and demand change. So just a quick rundown of the 19 bills we have supported so far. I'm going to try to go quickly, and I'll spend more time on some than others, but this is all available on the website, but I do think they're worth talking about. First are the ones that are sponsored by Streets for All. So these are the ones that we personally had a hand in creating, or are really hands-on in helping move and mold as it makes its way through the legislature. We are really focused this year on the noise pollution issue, specifically from illegally modified mufflers. So we have a bill that would actually freeze registration on cars that have not basically modified or have not basically fixed their illegally modified mufflers. And so that kind of like is a forcing function to get them to fix these. These are basically like, very common in street racing. And I guess similarly to that bill, there's a bill that would create an automatic enforcement mechanism, or an automatic enforcement system that would like ticket those cars. It's just a fix-it ticket. So it's the same ticket that they get now. It's $25 if they get it fixed, but it would automatically be able to enforce that. And we're working with the ACLU and other sort of equity and privacy organizations to make this like as fair as possible. And there's exemptions for low income, and there's privacy provisions as well to make sure the data is deleted promptly, and all of that. So this has been like an interesting bill to work on, but we're trying to make sure we get it right because it is a sensitive issue. SB 932 is exciting because it requires cities to fix their deadliest streets. So similar to like AB 43 last year, like identified, high injury corridors and allowed cities to reduce speed limits. This requires cities to actually follow the circulation element of their general plan and to actually implement the improvements that they need to within a specified time period on their deadliest streets. That was a bill that we came to Senator Portantino with. Senator Portantino last year was the one that killed Laura Freeman's parking minimum bill, 1401. And he's actually become, over COVID, an avid cyclist. He's lost, I think, over 75 pounds, and now really wants to see safe streets because he's tired of biking and, having his safety threatened, as many of us are. So he's become like a big complete streets and safe streets advocate. So we're working with him to try to, keep pushing him on the parking minimums issue, and also keep producing great legislation with him. And he's a very powerful member of the state Senate. He's the appropriations chair. So almost as powerful as it gets for that body. And then this bill is exciting. It would standardize the pedestrian head starts or the leading pedestrian intervals that you see at intersections where, the pedestrians get to go before the cars. So it makes pedestrians more visible so that for cars turning right or cars, what have you, it makes them more visible in the intersection. This would sort of identify a lot of different intersections where that's a very easy change to make, and we just make this a standard practice. And then 1975, we're also a co-sponsor of. Unfortunately, it got watered down recently, so it's no longer going to build bus shelters like we were advocating for. It's going to create a study for how many bus shelters we currently have, and the quality of those shelters that's going to hopefully power a more meaty bill later on that would actually create a bunch of really high quality bus shelters across the state. This one I'm really excited about, and it has not been announced yet, so you're really getting hearing about it first. So if you go look this up, you'll see a bill about Turkey. But this is another Portantino bill that we're essentially going to introduce in the next few weeks, and it would pay people a $2,500 tax rebate for every person in their tax household that they do not have a car for. So if you have 3 people in your tax household and you own 2 cars, you would essentially get a $2,500 tax rebate. And that could be up to, we're going to set a maximum because you have to with the budget. So it might be up to like 3 cars. So you could get money for not having a car. And this, we hope to encourage people, just like we do with electric cars. Like we give people money to buy electric cars, we should be giving people money to not own any cars, because obviously we need to encourage people to use different modes of transportation with the climate crisis and what have you, and our traffic violence crisis. And these are, I'm going to run through these quicker because these are the bills that we did not sort of like instigate and we're not working as closely because we're not the sponsors of them, but we are putting our weight behind them and supporting them through, our own advocacy still, creating group letters and, advocating our legislators and getting the word out and doing calls to action and stuff like that. So a bill that would require supervision for young drivers. So right now, apparently you don't need a sort of a provisional license after you're 18. You need one like from like 16 to 18 where the adult is sitting next to you. And they found that like 16 to 18-year-olds are much safer drivers than 18 to 21-year-olds. So even though they're younger, they're safer because they have this period of time where they have to be with a parent or a guardian for like 6 months while they drive. So this bill would require that period to be extended through 21. So young drivers would still have somebody next to them up until the age of 21 for at least 6 months in order to get that real license. AB 2438, this is the kind of a wonky Friedman bill, Laura Friedman, that would basically make sure all transportation projects that they're kind of quantified by their ability to reduce greenhouse gases. Similarly, AB 1938 is another Friedman bill that sort of creates this task force that's supposed to address this problem of declining transit ridership and how to increase funding to these agencies. Another Laura Friedman bill, AB 2336, basically creates a speed safety camera program. So for school zones, for high injury streets, the ability to automatically ticket folks that are egregiously speeding. And again, these tickets have provisions to exempt low income. There's a bunch of privacy concerns that are addressed in this bill that we felt comfortable supporting it. And yeah, this one we're hoping to get passed this year. 2237 is another Friedman bill that, so Laura Friedman, she's the Assembly Transportation Chair. And so that's why she's so prolific on transportation bills. You can see on her report card, she has she's one of the extraordinary ones, but she authored a bill that would require these new transit projects to reduce emissions, like basically creating a way to gauge those products on how they reduce greenhouse gases. This bill is back from last year, decriminalizing jaywalking, which obviously was created by the car companies to discourage or to shift the blame from on pedestrians for their own deaths. This term jaywalking was sort of created in the 1920s when car accidents and pedestrian deaths were, rampant. And this bill got vetoed by Gavin Newsom last year, and we're trying again with 2147 and supporting it again, hoping that Governor Newsom makes a different call, and we're going to be lobbying him again this year. AB 2097 is the 1401 from last year from Laura Friedman that would eliminate all parking minimums near transit. And I think this one's been modified slightly, but still a very powerful bill that we're hoping with a similar provision of within a half mile. So we're hoping to get that passed. This one I think is one of the most transformative ones. It would mandate that all transit agencies in California have a free program for anyone under 25 years old. So free transit for all young people under 25, which I think is pretty incredible. If we start to get people and young people used to riding transit, essentially the idea is that would continue, that would become a habit and continue. AB 1909 is being referred to as the Bikes Belong Bill or the Omni Bike Bill. This is another Laura Friedman bill that would require motorists to use a full lane when passing a cyclist. It would ban cities from requiring bike licenses, which are, overwhelmingly enforced on minorities. The idea of you need to have a bike license to ride a bike. And it would also ban cities from being able to ban e-bikes on trails. So it would stop cities from being able to say no e-bikes allowed on this bike trail. So it kind of allows for more cycling, and it even lets cyclists use pedestrian signals. So when the walk signal goes, when the walk signal allows you to walk, you can also ride your bike. 1778 would completely end freeway widening in all underserved or polluted or I guess areas that experience high rates of pollution or poverty. So this would end freeway widening in much of California. Most of the state would qualify actually. So this is a pretty transformative bill to end freeway widening, which we know to be with induced demand. Like we know freeway widening basically doesn't help make traffic any better. It actually makes traffic worse, increases pollution, increases the amount of people that drive, and displaces people, predominantly people of color and low-income folks. And then AB 1713 by Boehner Horvath allows cyclists to yield at stop signs. This was also here last year. We tried to get it passed. It got vetoed by Newsom. The only difference this year is that this only applies now to adults. So Newsom's concern was children. So the bill has been amended to apply if you're an adult, you can use a stop sign as a yield sign. And SB 922, this one's particularly relevant to Culver City because a bill, SB 288 from COVID era, which we're still in COVID era, but a bill from 2 years ago was passed, which would allow bike and bus projects to fast track through CEQA. And that's how we got Move Culver City. Move Culver City was, we had a threat to sue the city from a local car dealership because it did not go through the proper CEQA channels or approvals or community input. But because of SB 288, which Scott Weiner authored, it was exempt from some of that long approval process. And SB 922 would make that permanent. So that had an expiration date, which is why Move Culver City was able to take advantage of that. And SB 922 makes that fast track through CEQA for these bike and bus projects permanent, which makes sense because if it's the California Environmental Quality Act, these are environmental projects. They shouldn't be bogged down for years in CEQA approvals. And then finally, AB 1685 is from our Assembly member, Isaac Bryan, which would forgive parking fines for up to $1,500 in parking fines for unhoused folks. So if you imagine you're, sleeping in your car and you're unhoused, life is already pretty difficult and you're already in crisis. So you probably don't need parking fines on top of that experience. And so this would create a program to forgive $1,500 in parking fines for those folks. And that's it. And if you want to get involved, please hit me up, or you can subscribe to us at streetsforall.org/get-involved, or find us on social media at Streets for All. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Let me put the other panelists back in the spotlight, and then we can take the questions. Let's see. Okay, great. So I have Disa, and then Tad, and then Kin, and then Thomas. And anyone else who has a question, please raise your Zoom hand. Disa, please go ahead.
Thanks for the wonderful presentations. I feel like I learned something from all three of you who shared. I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about, just briefly about the relationship between the master plan that was adopted or completed in 2010 and the more recent action plan, which it was really nice to have the link for that, and I'll read it carefully. It's well over 200 pages. So I was starting to browse through it, and then I realized that's not going to happen. I just am so keen on the idea of Culver City having connections all across town so people can take their bike safely. So many more people would ride their bikes, I'm really convinced, if they felt that they could safely go from one part of town to another. And where there are protected bike path, with their bike paths and protected bike lanes, it makes such a difference. So I'm wondering if you could talk more about how we can actually achieve that and what we can do to help if we support it.
Well, I just want to quickly say that I personally haven't looked at the old master plan for quite some time. And so I don't know if I can do a compare and contrast, but I can say that the action plan has a very detailed list of places where infrastructure is needed, and it has been prioritized. And it goes a long way towards the goal that you're talking about, creating a complete network. And I know that Mary can talk more about that because that's a huge goal, I know, for Bike Culver City. But just in terms of the plan, it is very detailed. I mean, it lists specific streets, and it talks. And if you look at the link that I put in the, well, that Leah was good enough to put in the chat for me, there's a website that from Public Works that lists, going back to 2010, which would have been referencing the old plan, it lists all the places they were able to put in bike lanes when they were repaving streets, which is, it's a step in the right direction. LA is trying to get that, that ordinance passed that requires them to put in that kind of infrastructure. So since 2010, we've been trying to do this. Our city has been trying to do this. So that's good. It doesn't create a complete network, but it's a start. And then they list all the places this happened. And then in the plan, in the action plan, you can see all the different places where the intention is there to do it. And the big gap is basically funding. So hopefully, if we keep our eyes on the prize, the budget cycle is coming up, maybe money can be found to advance this.
Also, if I could just add that this is where all of our presentations sort of connect, because when Bubba's talking about SB 922, which fast tracks bike and bus projects, it also makes them a lot cheaper because you're relieved of certain CEQA review and all that, which costs a huge amount of money. So that's, we were able to put the city was able to put Culver City in really quickly and for like a fraction of the cost that had been estimated for essentially a similar piece of infrastructure that was in the action plan, but Culver City came along and kind of did a different version of it that went much faster and for a lot less money. So if we can get SB 922 through, that might help us with some of the financial burdens of getting some of these projects done that are already on the city's radar and on the city's list on that public works site of things that are pending. So
Thank you so much.
Great. Tad, go ahead with your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So I live in Baldwin Hills, folks, but I, like many of my neighbors, live a great deal of my life in Culver City, go back and forth. For those of you who know the geography, and I bet most of you do, Obama Boulevard, which feeds into Jefferson Boulevard, is pretty much our only artery to go due west into Culver City. And that specific stretch between of Jefferson, between where Obama begins and then Duquesne on the other end. As I sit here and think about it, I think I can identify at least three problems. Some of these go a little bit beyond cycling. One, between about 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. On any weeknight, you can't proceed in a car eastbound back to Baldwin Hills. It's just always jam-packed. Point two, the super popularity of the still relatively new Baldwin Hills overlook there means there's always people trying to park, and there's often people double park and crossing against the signal, and it's just kind of a real dangerous situation. And number three, worst of all, when it's not those hours, the opposite is the case. Cars go really fast on that stretch, and it's perilous for cyclists. And I would be terrified to ride my bike on that stretch. And I hate to even bring this up, but I think about 7 years ago, there was a horrible accident where some driver plowed into a group and killed some of them going fast. I think it was late at night. So do any of you all have anything to say? Oh, and let me just throw in one more thing, which is a related issue. While you all were talking, I went to BionaCreek.org/bike path. And tonight it says a new gate at Heigera, which I think it was you, Mary, mentioned that, is scheduled to open in 2016. That's what it says tonight. So that hasn't been updated. I take it that gate does not yet exist, and something went wrong there, but hopefully that gate will exist. That would solve some of these problems, but I hope there's some larger thinking about this perilous stretch between Duquesne and Obama of Jefferson Boulevard. Thank you for letting me put a lot of stuff on the table. Thanks.
I just want to say one thing really quick. Sorry, I'm sorry for talking so much, but I think it's really interesting you mentioned that stretch, because a few weeks ago, we actually tried to set up a date with city staff to take them on a bike ride exactly through that stretch of street that you're talking about, because they have decided to make that a detour route because of this construction of the gate at Heigera. And we went, what? you can't do that. That's not safe. And they didn't come on the ride with us. So, but we're still going to get them on that to show them, because you're right, it's treacherous. But if you go down there, you will see that the gate, I mean, that Heigera Bridge, which involves the new ramp onto the bike path, is actually under construction. So I don't remember the projected date now that they're talking about. That's open. I'm sorry. I just don't remember it. Maybe someone else does, but it's not that far off. So that doesn't help much. But the other thing is, Jefferson is being talked about as getting some kind of treatment, quick build treatment, like the Move Culver City project downtown. So we give it more bus mobility, protected bike lane, something that would connect to that E-line station at La Cienega and go around all the way. But that is not, it's just in discussion phase so far. It's not very far along either. So maybe the rest of you want to talk. I'll be quiet. I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanted to add that, okay, so the good news is that there is a crappy bike lane there, because when that Overlook Park first opened, I think you probably all remember that there was no bike lane, there was no signal at the entrance to the park, and people were running back and forth, and it was so scary. It was just so scary. So it's still scary, but at least there's that traffic signal, and there's a bike lane. The bad news is the bike lane is worn out, and there's big segments of it that are invisible. But staff has been made aware of that, and they promised that they're going to fix it. In fact, maybe it's fixed now. I don't know. I haven't been on it in a week. So those, and then the other good news is that Move Culver City will have a phase on both Jefferson and Sepulveda. So we need to be, really advocating for that to get moved on quickly, because it's so needed.
Yeah, I'd like to say too that the during the pandemic, the city started doing things like these quick builds that hasn't been done before, and it's been really exciting for us, because rather than something sitting in the planning stage for years and then getting funding and then being built and then it's permanent, the quick builds let the city do things. Still, it took a year and a half or more, but it lets them put things in the street and then improve them before it becomes a permanent thing. And so we really support that, and we hope that the funding comes for more of it. And also, slow streets was something that happened during the pandemic that is also essentially a quick build. It's something where they allowed, and Bubba and Bike Culver City were actually very instrumental in getting this to happen. So it only took 5 months, but they put streets signs out to try to slow traffic on some residential streets, including Farragut, which is one of the long-term sort of bike boulevard projects that still hasn't happened, but will hopefully happen in the next year. So anytime you see any kind of quick build situation, it's really important to get community support for that, because it is not the final version of something. It's designed for people to give feedback on and improve and make better and safer for everyone.
I'm sorry, I'm going to say one more thing. I think if I lived in Baldwin Hills, I might try to go take a street. There's a lot of streets that you can actually cross over Exposition, Jefferson, and you can go down to West Adams, where now you can get on the beautiful buffer lanes. And that yet doesn't totally, you have about, what is it, you guys, about 3 or 4 blocks that don't connect to Move Culver City, but they're not scary blocks. And you might try that route to come into Culver City, because it takes you probably right onto Move Culver City, the protected bike lane. It's really fun. I do that route a lot. It just depends on where you are in Baldwin Hills. I can't tell you exactly what street, but there's some pretty nice streets to take down to West Adams. You might want to check that
But
out.
I would pick it up on Adams Boulevard.
West Adams, yeah, because they have these wonderful buffered bike lanes now. So buffered means, they don't have bollards protecting them, but they have, what is it, about 3-4 feet of space between you and the traffic.
Right.
It's quite, I like them a lot. I use them a lot. So that might be,
Thank you so much, Mary. Let me just quickly say, and I know, Mr. President, you want to move on. That would require riding a bicycle on either La Cienega or La Brea for about a mile to get up to Adams. And that's even more treacherous.
No, you don't have to do that. You can go
get to
down,
Adams?
a neighborhood street. I'm sorry, I've done it so many times, but I don't remember the.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'll do
Miss
some
Lawler's
research
on
and
the corner.
study the maps with my
Yeah.
magnifying glass. Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot, Mary.
Sure, you're welcome.
Great. The personal is political. Kin, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm so proud that Bubba, our vice chair of the advisory committee on housing and homelessness, made this wonderful presentation along with his cohorts there. Bubba, I just have a question about AB 2336, which involves creating automated speed enforcement pilot program. Does that mean that the speed enforcement is going to be done by something other than live human being or live law enforcement officer? And secondly, how will that be funded?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I'm not as intimately involved in that one. I do know that, and by the way, that was nice of you to say that, and I appreciate I appreciate seeing you on this call too. The program is, the intent of it is to be able to remove armed officers from some of that traffic enforcement, because obviously the more traffic stops with armed officers, the more opportunity there is for conflict, and for tragic consequences, and for profiling. So the idea is if these tools can reduce speeding, which they've been proven to do in other states and municipalities, like in DC, they're used, and there was a whole study that proved that they actually reduce speeding there without the use of any more traffic stops from armed officers, then that would be a benefit. Obviously, the cameras need to have an auditing system. They need to have a data retention policy that protects people's privacy, that can report on the data, but have it be completely anonymized. And they need to make sure that the data is completely wiped when a violation has been resolved and paid. Things like that are in the bill. The cool thing about 2336 is it's actually funded in and of itself. So the violation fees fund the program. And then after the program is funded, the remainder of the violation fees that are generated go to traffic calming measures in that neighborhood. So it's beneficial for proponents of the bill, including myself, argue it's beneficial. This program is beneficial for those neighborhoods because those fees go to create a safer environment. It's not like they're just going into the city's general fund to do whatever with, or to increase policing. They're literally, the fees from it create and reimburse the program itself, and then actually go to create traffic calming implementations and designs on those streets. Hope I answered your question, Kinkin.
Thanks, you did, Bubba. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Great. We're going to go to Thomas and then Donna with the last question. So Thomas, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I just was sort of, I guess from my involvement with the Ballona Creek, I'm sort of aware of the fact that there's been a bit of a push-pull with some of the neighborhoods, I guess, bordering the Ballona Creek, because there was a feeling, I guess, among people that lived in some of these neighborhoods, had been there for a while, that the Ballona Creek bike path was going to be dangerous, and that there would be dangerous people on it, and it would become this, sort of crime corridor. And that was one of the reasons why there's still fencing up and there's still, barriers up. So my question was a little bit more like, in terms of strategy, have you had any conversations with people who are opposed to sort of opening up those gates or taking down those fences? And if so, what is their position as you understand it? And what sort of arguments have you been able to make, or have you attempted to sort of get people to think about it differently?
Well, I guess I'll take that one because it's been in front of the committee a number of times. And I personally have not had the opportunity, although one of the neighbors did reach out to me and invited me to come, and I said I would really be delighted to, and we really never did get a chance to connect. But I've been on the street a bunch of times to be able to experience it myself and see what it was like, which I'm not saying that's enough, but it's what I've done. We have had extensive community conversation about this at the BPAC and also at the council meetings. And the BPAC already made a recommendation a couple of years ago, and the council already they already adopted a plan. So the plan will be implemented at the end of May. So we're talking about something that's kind of already been hashed and rehashed. But in terms of argument, yeah, I've heard a lot of fear. I've heard a lot of people worried about a lot of things, about, I don't know, theft and homelessness, and something might happen with somebody backing out of a driveway, and just lots and lots of fear. The arguments that I've heard to counter this, and that I've experienced myself, because I live in a neighborhood that's adjacent to the Ballona Creek that's never closed. There are no gates and it's never closed 24/7. So that is one, argument. Personal experience shows me that these concerns are not necessarily valid. And then there's all of the expo, where the expo bike path is, all of those streets that come in there into the bike path there, all of those are open 24/7. And according to staff, there has not been an issue. And according to Culver City Police Department, there's been no issue. So, it seems like at this point, with the amount of input and the amount of data, the next step is we just have to see how it will go, because the council has already decided it should be open. And then there are gates that are in Los Angeles. And a number of years ago, a couple of our council members, I think it might have been Thomas Small and Joran Eriksson, had been talking with LA council members about opening up gates that are a bit west of us. And they were saying, well, you open your gates and we'll open our gates. So, we're going to open our gate, and hopefully they'll be, they'll do the same, and we'll have more access all up and down the creek.
So it sounds like you feel like you have actually won the political discussion because you have leadership from the city council, and you feel like people in those neighborhoods will just eventually get used to it. Is that fair?
Well, I don't know about winning a political anything. I mean, that's not, I don't really accept that. I feel like you're kind of trying to put words into my mouth. But my feeling is that the council, deliberated. They heard all of this. They deliberated on it. They had recommendations from BPAC. They had recommendations from the staff, and they made a decision. And now, hopefully it's the best decision for the whole community. That, that's kind of where it is right now. I don't know about, like it almost makes it sound like there's gloating happening. And I don't feel that way at all. I just feel like this is probably a good decision for the community. let's hope it is. Let's move forward. Let's see it happen. And then, and then we'll assess.
And I would just also say that there's safety considerations on all sides. Most of the people who are using, the vast majority are on the creek, are the people that live around here, that live in Culver City. So they're people like me that have a house on Vinton that, are 2 blocks from Jackson. And it's to be able to access the creek through the neighborhood is much safer than going to Duquesne or Overland that are much higher speed and only have painted lines for access. And there's tons of school children that use that route. My daughter was someone who was on the cross country team, and they were using that bike path all the time. And sort of it's a 1 mile stretch between Duquesne and Overland with right now no access. And adding an access point is a safety consideration that benefits all users of the bike path, and probably would have helped somebody who actually passed away on the bike path because emergency services couldn't get to them in time when they had I believe, a heart attack on it a few years ago.
Well, if you're right, then I think that's great. I'm just concerned that there could be some people who are pretty hardcore anti-bike path. There's a bunch of blocks sort of towards the western edge of Culver City going towards Playa del Rey, where, there's just a lot of fencing up, and people have kept putting up padlocks. And then other people cut the padlocks, and then other people put new padlocks. And, I hope that there's momentum to convince those people to just let it go. But I think there might be some hardcore people who are still putting up resistance.
So we'll move to Donna, who has the last question.
Hi. So I, over the last few years, have found myself unable to balance well on a 2-wheel bike. So I'm investigating a tricycle, basically. And so as I've been driving around and looking at the various bike lanes that we have, I did speak to Jim Shanman the other night, and he said they're wide enough to accommodate a tricycle. But, I don't know, it makes me feel sort of nervous. I don't see, when I look at the pictures of the various bicycle groups having their events and stuff, I don't see any 3-wheel bikes. Maybe they're there and I'm just somehow, Kareem, you haven't put them in the front, so I can't see them. Sorry. But anyway, what are people's thoughts about that?
Well, we just had a Costco bike ride where we had people who were on cargo bikes and a tricycle and various things. So we'll have to post a picture of that so that you can see that it is happening, and there's definitely people who of all ages and from young kids in a cargo bike with a family to people with mobility issues who are using tricycles. So it's, everyone is welcome as far as we're concerned.
Donna, I think there's going to be a lot more choices soon because the population's aging. And I think you're not the only one in this position by a long shot. And I hope you're looking at the e-tricycles. What I've noticed is the ones I've seen is that their base is narrower than the old tricycles used to be. But they look really comfy, and I see people going everywhere on them, and I've tried one myself, but I'm impressed with the size and shape of them as being different from what I remember from the ones I used to see. And these are also the new e-bike versions that I'm seeing. So I wish I had a brand name, but I would definitely go down and talk to, and maybe Jim told you this, but I would go down and talk to Ron at the Bike Hub, because that guy, he knows so much about what's coming out in bikes. He's so knowledgeable, right, Michelle? And I think, you know, I would go talk to him. You know the place I'm talking about by the E-Line station?
Well,
the bike
Well,
hub,
you
the
know,
bike
Jim
shop?
said to me the bike shop. Did he mean the bike hub?
It's the same. Well, okay, the bike hub is technically, I suppose, where you park your bike, but his shop is right adjacent. So yeah, that's where it is. He also owns one in Santa Monica, but might as well go to the one right here in Culver City.
Right.
I'm not sure what hours they're open. The hours used to be kind of restricted, but maybe they're open more.
On
And talk to
Saturday
him.
mornings until 3 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Okay, thank
really
you.
so glad you brought this up, Donna. So recently I was at the Cal Bike Summit and I went to a presentation about folks with disabilities not having the appropriate equipment available for them. And they were kind of focusing on a lot on bike share. And that's something that when we get closer to having something with Metro, I would really like to find out what's available and make sure that we have a variety of bikes for a variety of abilities available through bike share. That's one thing. Another thing they talked about, which, and I can't remember which town, I'll have to go back and look at my notes about where this was, but they had an actual facility near a park, and they had all different kinds of bikes that you could come and try out. People would come in their wheelchairs or their different mobility options, and they would have a friend or an ally help them transfer to a different kind of a bike so they could try it out. And they could even take it, you know, and use it for a day or several days. So I feel like there's just a wide open landscape of things that need to be tried and need to be provided in order to really achieve equity. And and so to make sure the paths are wide enough is just like, that's so important. And I'm thinking right now about that Alenda two-way bike path and how narrow it is.
Yeah.
And I do fret about that, but you know, let's hope that there are vehicles that will work. And I just wish we had a place where everybody could try these out before they made the purchase.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
I will hope to join you soon.
I'll be happy to go with you over to Ron and talk to Ron.
Oh,
If
great.
we can
Thank
work that
you.
out. So
Thank you very much.
And Kareem, you wanted to jump in here for a second at the end?
Yes, thank you so much for letting me speak, Mr. President. I couldn't raise my hand because I was a co-host. I want to share a few slides that may, you know, give a somber tone to the end of our meeting.
Well, if you must.
Do you see them? Do you see my screen?
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So, you know, Thomas, you were asking, you know, did we talk to people regarding, you know, the fear of what's going on, and if we open, what will happen if we open a gate? And I downloaded the data that is available from the Culver City Police website, all those police report, and I crunched the numbers. It was pretty easy because I was able to go back up to 2012 to now, and I tried to figure out what is killing us in our street aside COVID. We all have seen a lot of you know, clips coming here and there. Somebody is having an accident in Culver City, and then we're shocked about it. We blame the drivers, and then we move on. But if you look at the data, there are two sets of numbers. The first one at the top is the one provided by the police regarding violent crimes. And then there is a second set of data that is also provided by the police, but never mentioned anywhere. And I want to point out that we are far more at risk in our street than in a bank or next to the Bayona Creek. People are dying a lot, 18 dead in less than 10 years. It's a gigantic number for just 40,000 people. And I just want to point out also that we are far more people who got to the hospital because of car crashes than we have violent crimes themselves. So to me, it's critical that we keep pushing forward for safer street, protected bike lane, protected intersection, and making sure that our kids are able to go to school safely by themselves, like we used to do when we were the age of the kids. And that's my hot take. Thank you.
Thanks, Kareem. And thanks to everybody who spoke. Despite knowing all y'all for a while now and hearing about all these organizations, it's really great to have it spelled out very clearly what they each do and how they connect. And so I really appreciate everybody coming and sharing that, and everyone who stuck around to listen. We have one more speaker